NWP Radio.
You're listening to NWP Radio, a production of the National Writing Project.
NWP. NWP Radio.
Hello, listeners. Happy harvest for those pulling in the last of your vegetables, and welcome to another episode of the National Writing Project's The Right Time. I'm Brian Ripley Crandall, director of the Connecticut Writing Project at Fairfield University, and all week I've been thinking of the nicknames my students have given me over the years. Once it was Mr. Moonbeam, for a while it was Seahorse, but my personal favorite was Brian the Geek Boy Frog. Brian the Geek Boy Frog? That one has a long history to it, and one day I'll tell you all. But I continue with that name with pride. Why? Because I've always been an out-of-the-box thinker, and for many, my teaching style has been very whimsical and crazy and, well, weird at times. I'm all for cheering on eccentricity, creativity, and for those who tiptoe through the daffodils at the beat of a different flautist. It is why I can't wait for this evening's interview. I've been thinking about it every day this week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago. I'm like, I can't wait to learn more about tonight's guest and the work he brings our way. I think our students are going to love this. Hey, Tanya, you're my
Hi,
cohort in
Brian.
crime. How you doing? Anything weird in your world lately?
Oh, Brian, that's you. Well, I mean, everybody knows that, well, not everybody, that's coming from the octopus lady. So take that with a grain of salt. Of course, I learned a long time ago not to question the way you go at the world sometimes, but to embrace it, love it, and celebrate it. Because we're the National Writing Project, and we know that so many students we teach are unconventional, unpredictable, and doing their own thing. We love these kids, and thankful for us, they grow up to become writers and change the world. That's why we are proud to carry forward the Right Time tradition and bring Tony Weaver Jr., author of the book Weirdo, into the National Writing Project Circle. We were thrilled to hear from Melanie DuPont about its release and to learn that teacher leader Valeriana Boadu was thrilled to be our interviewer for the show.
Indeed, I'm super excited to meet Val as well. I get to introduce Tony. Tony Weaver Jr. is an award-winning writer and educator creating diverse stories that make young people feel seen and valued. Applause, applause, applause. After seeing the impact that media stereotypes had on students in his own community, Tony embarked on a journey to create new media narratives that would change the status quo. Weaver is the founder and CEO of Weird Enough Productions, a media company dedicated to using anime to create original content featuring positive representations of Black men and other minority groups. Under the company banner, he created the acclaimed webcomic, The Uncommons, which has earned a dedicated fan base of over 800,000 readers and is available now on Webtoons. Weaver is also the brainchild behind The Dream Frontier, a young adult isekai anime fantasy adventure series in the vein of Ready Player One meets Avatar. The Last Airbender. It is set, this is set for release in 2026. And in the meantime, the book Weirdo is just outstanding for your classroom library.
Nice. I want to apologize. I'm pretty sure I have really already ruined Val's name. So I'm going to try again. Val Boadu, Val, you must have to correct me. I'm so sorry, is an educator, author, and storyteller. She was born on the Caribbean island of St. Lucia to a family of 10 children. She's been in education for over 25 years, teaching geography, language arts, and multilingual learners. She's a television presenter and a published author. Her very first novel was a romance novel, which placed her in the top 10 for romance writing and earned her a nomination by Foreword Reviews for excellence in writing. Since then, Val has published 11 more books, multicultural short stories, and language arts textbooks to support writing in elementary and secondary schools. Welcome, Val.
I was so glad to have you all.
As always, in the writing in the right time, Val's going to get us started with a writing prompt.
Okay. The alternate life swap. You wake up to discover you can swap lives with an alternate version of yourself for 24 hours. Who shows up? And what do they change about your world?
Oh, wow. What a great question.
Amazing.
I'm handing the show over to the two beautiful people that are in the room, and we wish you the greatest conversation.
Thank you. And welcome again, Tony. Now, what about you? What if you were to wake up and discover that you can swap lives with an alternate version of yourself for 24 hours? Who shows up and what do they change about your world? And let's add one more element. What superpower will they have?
I think I read the prompt wrong because when I read it, I thought about it as like an alternate version of myself, not from a different reality, but from a different time. For my longtime friends, there is a specific version of myself in my personal development journey that we refer to as 2014 Tony, because 2014 Tony was very no nonsense. That guy did not know how to have fun at all, but man, could he execute. God, that guy knew how to execute things. I'm like way, way, way more laid back. 2025 Tony is way more laid back than 2014 Tony. 2014, his blood pressure was high, but his results, they were also high. So I feel like there are multiple points in time where I'm like, man, I gotta go get that guy. Let me press a button and let him swap in for a bit. A lot of my organizational issues would be fixed if he popped in for 24 hours.
So, what superpower would he have, though?
I think it's organization, but like intense organization. Just a very clear ability to look at a situation and say, this is what's wrong, this is what needs to be fixed, this is a solution to the problem. I don't even know why you called me for this. What are we doing? I'm going back to sleep.
I think I'd hire that Tony as well,
Yeah, look at
actually.
that.
I would love to have that superpower. So, Tony, when I read your resume, I mean, it just blew me out of the water. I mean, it is extensive, it is phenomenal, it is fabulous. I also listened to your TED Talk, and I'd just like to
Mhm.
just again, you're a storyteller.
Indeed.
Your debut graphic novel, Weirdo, sold out of its first printing within the first few weeks. I
Mhm.
mean, you have been honored as Book of the Year by People Magazine, Publishers Weekly, School Library Journal, the New York Public Library, and the Chicago Public Library, all before turning 30.
Right at 30. Right at 30. I was trying to get it done before 30. That was my goal. But we're right there. We're right there. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
I mean, that is amazing. But so these are some of your accomplishments, your achievements. But who is Tony Weaver, really?
He's very, very tired boy. Is what I'll say. I think at any point in time you look over, it's like, Todd, what's going on with Tony? What's going on? What's going through Tony's head? It's like I'm sleepy, man. That's what I have most of the time. I just want to go sit somewhere. But for me, uh, writing is an escape. It's a place of fun. But writing, it's also something that keeps me awake. It incenses me. Like normally. I'm just trying to rest. I'm trying to sleep or watch TV or play Pokemon cards or do something, and a story will grab a hold of me and say, "Hey, I'm not leaving until you write me down." And I'm like, "Please, I just want to play Pokemon cards. I don't want no problems." But when the story shows up, when the story needs to be told, uh, what I like to say is that I tell stories that only I can tell. Not because of any sense of like arrogance or me feeling like I'm the only competent writer in the world, but the things that I tend to write are things in which, wow, this requires a very specific domain of niche expertise. And yeah, I could see why you're the one that's making this.
Now, one of the things that you said, which I absolutely loved, is that the story shows up. For me, as a writer as well, I don't write at night because it keeps me up.
Mm.
It becomes exciting. And like you said, the story grabs you. And you just need to get it down. And I know some of our students who are listening need to get a sense of that. When is the best time to write and how does the story come? And we're going to be talking a little bit more about this a little bit later. But tell us a little about the uncommons.
Yeah, so The Uncommons is the first series that I wrote for other people to read anyway. I'd done a lot of like poetry, short stories, and things like that, but The Uncommons was the first foray into creating media for general consumption. So The Uncommon tells the story of five unlikely outsiders that have to save the world from an apocalyptic prophecy centuries in the making. Our main character is this very awkward optimist named Iris that has a vision where she predicts the end of the world, and we follow her on her journey of trying to stop that vision from becoming reality. It was my first kind of long form project, and I learned a lot in writing it. I still think it's really good. I think the Uncommons for me is a very bittersweet project because it was my first project. So I look back at it and I'm like, there are ways where you could have improved. But I also look back at it and I go, since it was my first project, I don't think people were ready to give it the love that I inherently think that it deserved because of its merit as a story. One of the things about a writer that I notice is that you can tell the most amazing story in the world, but if the world's not ready to hear it, if people aren't ready to open their ears or their hearts, even the most amazing story can go unnoticed. So I think one of my career goals in general is just, even with the other stories I'm working on right now, the Uncommons paved the way for me to tell those stories, but those stories are going to pave the way for more people to hear about the Uncommons and read the Uncommons.
So, Tony, what inspired you to start writing? Can you tell us a little about what motivated you to write Weirdo and what message you wanted your readers to take away from it?
Well, in general, in Weirdo, something that I talk about and that I'm very open about is that I'm a suicide survivor. I attempted suicide in my early teens because of this feeling of uh, feeling like I didn't have value, like there wasn't really anything that I brought to the table. And in that dark time, stories were really what were able to bring me out of it. In a time when I didn't believe in myself, when I didn't have friends, when I couldn't talk to my parents, stories kind of stood in the gap for me. And the stories that were there for me predominantly were comic books, anime, manga, video games. And so especially there's a anime called Eureka 7 that was hugely influential for me. And it was when I watched it as a kid, it was the first time that I actually paid attention to the credits to see who wrote something at the end of a show. And what I said was, if it's possible for a story to make people feel the way that I just felt, like if that's a job, I want to do that. And after kind of coming out on the other side of my mental health journey and reaching a place of stability, what I said is that since stories saved my life, I made a promise that I would use stories to save other people. So in general, my ethos as a writer, the reason that I approach writing the way that I approach it is in part because I think it's very I think stories are just a really powerful thing. And it's my responsibility as a creative to make sure that I'm stewarding those sorts of stories. I think when I was writing Weirdo, I was really upset. We were kind of in the midst of pandemic-based distance learning. Kids were struggling with their mental health a lot. It seemed like every week I was reading another story of a child that was lost to self-harm. And as someone that came out on the other side of that, I felt a deep sense of personal responsibility. I had been in that darkness before. So to me, I said, well, I know where they are because I've been there before. They're like, no one wants a kid to be in the dark. But if you've never been there, you don't really know how to navigate that terrain. You don't know how to get to where they are. So I felt it was my responsibility to make something that could meet kids where they are in that way, something that didn't trivialize their experiences and something that made them feel seen.
I absolutely love it. I taught high school in the Caribbean, and as I listened to you just talk about suicide, there were so many of my students who had, you know, the same kind of feeling and similar experiences. And it's a pity that at that time your work did not exist. So kudos to you. And I mean, I'm just grateful that you have the mission and the vision to really help, especially teens. From your bio, Tony, we learned that you made a commitment to tell stories that offered acceptance, hope, and inspiration for anyone who's ever felt left out. How do you approach sensitive topics like mental health, identity, relationships in a way that's easy and it resonates with your readers?
I think that the stories that kids respect are the stories that respect them. And that's what I always attempt to do. Something that kind of frustrates me as a writer, and I'm not going to call out any specific names because I think that there's room for like all types of writing. Um, and these people are my peers, right? So I ain't trying to have nobody attack me at NCTE. But I think very often we trivialize subjects for young people because we think that they're not ready for something when they're dealing with the problem already. So even with Weirdo is a
I
book that
love
talks
it.
about mental health. In Weirdo, like I'm very we address it in a very tasteful way, but the fact that I attempt suicide is something that is in the book. And I remember seeing reviews from teachers that said, "This is an amazing book. This is a beautiful book. I think it should be in every high school. I think it's a little too much for middle school audiences." And I said, well, I attempted suicide in the seventh grade. So if there's a kid that's like I am today, the kid that's dealing with the thing, that's carrying the thing right now, you're telling them that they're ready to carry the problem, but they're not ready for a potential solution. They're not ready for a potential way to think around this problem or this thing that they're experiencing. We end up thinking that kids aren't capable of carrying a lot of the things that they already carry. So for me, I write things that respect the nuance of what kids are experiencing, that respect the complexity of their feelings, because I think that's where we find a lot of success. A lot of kids today are reading a lot of anime, manga, comic books, and I think in part the reason that that's happening is because those stories actually respect where they are. Like there's a manga called Demon Slayer. It has a movie, like the Demon Slayer movie just came out. It made $500 million in like 4 days. It's number one movie in the global box office. So an anime movie is making more than some Marvel movies. And Demon Slayer also broke a bunch of records for its manga sales. And what's funny is Demon Slayer is a book that if it was not published in Japan, probably wouldn't have been published. Because if you took the exact same book and you brought it to the United States and you tried to pitch it to any of the big five publishers, they would laugh you out of the room. If you said, I have a book that fifth, sixth, and seventh graders are going to be reading where a kid whose family gets murdered by demons goes on a journey to kill the top 10 demons by beheading them, they'd be like, absolutely not. No way. No, 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 no. And if it somehow managed to get published, parents would be boycotting it, like it'd be on banned book lists. It'd be like, no, 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 there's no way. But since Weirdo came out, I've been to over 60 schools across the US. I've seen Demon Slayer at every school, every elementary school, every middle school, every high school. Because when books are published outside of the parameters of traditional Western publishing and they find success, suddenly Western publishing doesn't really care anymore. They're like, oh, it's successful, it's making money, I want it, I'll stock it. But if you bring them that story at the beginning, like I said earlier, sometimes their ears aren't open to listening and their hearts aren't open to understanding. So I try to take some notes from manga because I think there's a reason it's as successful as it is.
Okay, I love it. I know that as I read your novel and I observed the superpowers you highlighted, I began to think about mine. I never even thought I even had one, but I guess mine was wit, humor, and
Mhm.
organization. Now, okay, so you said that you think one of your superpowers might be organization as well.
Mhm.
But my question is, what superpower do you think educators, especially educators who work with minority students, should show up with every single day?
Well, I think so. My mom's a public educator. Every educator that I know that's good at their job shows up with a superpower of patience, just off rip patience. Because I think back about some of my teachers, and I'm like, man, I would have smacked him across the back of the head. Like young Tony, I would have. There's no way. There's no way. Wow. Thank you for being patient with this with this kid. But I think the educators that are working with minority students, I think the superpower that you have to show up with is like flexibility. Um, because for me, one of the things I love about writing is that I get to demonstrate the various ways that joy and intelligence and strength can exist across the spectrum of the human condition. And unfortunately, in academic circumstances, in schools, we don't always have the opportunity to demonstrate that broad spectrum of how intelligence can look. So I think teachers being flexible in how they allow their students to show up can really make way for intelligence of all different sorts and kinds. What I always say, which is also something that's being addressed in Weirdo 2, like Weirdo 2 is being illustrated right now. Um, I do not think that the public education system inherently knows how to quantify or codify intelligence. I think we try in a bunch of different ways that we know are fundamentally flawed, but we make those flaws the kids' fault. You go like, well, this is a standardized test, and I know you can't standardize intelligence, but this is the best I got. So you better do well at it, or you're not getting that scholarship you want. And even though my system of measuring what makes you smart is flawed, if you learn how to navigate that system, actually, this is good for you. I'm actually doing you a favor by making you jump through arbitrary hoops. Because guess what, young man? The real world is all arbitrary hoops. And instead of trying to remove those hoops, it's my job to make you a better jumper. And we just like accepted that. Like people just that's just what it is. And I don't inherently think it has to be that way. So I think educators that show up with that spirit of flexibility in their hearts, where they're like, it is not my job to make my student a hoop jumper for the private sector. It is my job to make my student the best version of themselves that can set goals and acquire the skills necessary to accomplish them on their own terms. I think like that's a lot, but that's why it's a superpower.
Because teachers will tell you, well, we have a curriculum, we have
Mhm.
only so much time, we
Yeah.
have a test, we're penalized if our students. So what would you say to a teacher like that?
I mean, I think that's real. That's real,
Mm.
truly. I think that what it is, especially because my big thing is I'm like, I have not been a teacher, so I can't tell a teacher how to teach. The only thing that I can say is I hope that in your heart there's a desire to help kids be the best version of themselves. And whatever the execution of that looks like under the constraints and parameters that you have, I understand. You don't make the rules. You don't create the curriculum. You don't choose when that nosy administrator shows up for that classroom evaluation. You don't pick any of those things. So I think whatever you are doing with that sentiment in your heart, I think that's enough. Because I also think that teachers are overworked and underpaid. So I'm like, I can't expect you to put on the kids' oxygen mask when you don't have your oxygen mask on. There's a balance. And however things look when that balance is in place, I gotta respect that.
Tell us a little about nerd literacy.
So Nerds for Literacy is a charity initiative that I started. We're focused on donating books to kids at underfunded schools and libraries because I think that the way that we teach reading in the United States, just literacy in general, is very interesting to me. I'm working on a long form video essay right now where my thesis is kind of that literacy was not created to be a tool for everybody. When you look at the kind of establishing points of literacy as a concept, everybody was never meant to know how to read. Literacy was something that was invented by the powers that be to maintain value, whether that's like value in the literal sense for their pocketbooks. So, like literacy, when the ancient Sumerians created cuneiform, it was created because they were trying to keep track of their stocks and their accounting. It was not so that everybody could process knowledge and have access to things. Literacy was made so that a very specific group of people could maintain power. And over the course of history, we've kind of democratized literacy in a really positive way. More people have gotten the opportunity to get access to literacy, but there are still systems in place that reflect that initial gatekeeping power structure of why literacy was invented. And Nerds for Literacy is kind of my way of saying, I think the only way that we defeat systems is by implementing better systems. And Nerds for Literacy is me taking a gamble and saying, well, what if there was a better system where we could read for joy, where we could read based on interest, where the skill of reading was more important than whatever curriculum you were putting in front of me, and whatever preconceived notions about the canon or kind of anchor text are necessary for a kid to be considered learned or enlightened. I kind of had this harebrained scheme and kind of went and got the nerd community involved. We raised over $100,000 in 4 weeks to make donations to schools around the country. And I think long term, it's my goal that Nerds for Literacy will be like the reading equivalent of the Girl Scouts of America. Imagine chapters in schools and libraries around the country focused on literacy through a lens of joy, through a lens of agency, kind of fostering a culture and love of reading in their specific schools and communities. We get a whole generation of nerds, and I think that'd be really cool.
All dressed in costumes.
100%. It's not necessary, but it's encouraged.
And I really love it. I remember when I watched your TED Talk, it had, I mean, there was so much passion. I literally have it as one of those tools that I'm going to use for PDs with teachers because I think that there's a lot that we as educators could actually glean from it. I was so impressed. I kept on playing it and playing it. I was like, wow. And he's under 30. This is like around 2019.
Yeah.
How is that even possible? Phenomenal.
I'm grateful for the love. I think the that talk was like very much an inflection point for me. It's something that I'm really proud of, and it's something that I hope continues to inspire people. I got a lot more to say. I have a lot more stories that I want to tell. And it's my hope that through Weirdo and its success, I get the opportunity to do so.
Has anyone ever walked up to you and told you, your book, Weirdo, has really affected my life. It has changed my life. It has transformed it. It helped to save me. It helped to make me feel, develop a sense of self-worth. Have you ever
Uh,
received any of these testimonials?
it's something that I'm hearing often, and it humbles me every time. So when I show up at schools, I get messages in my DMs. People send me like fan mail, and to me, the idea that my story could be helpful for somebody is infinitely humbling. Because I mean, in theory, that was always the plan, right? The reason I started writing Weirdo is because, like, in the time that I did my TED Talk, I was on the road every week. I was different school, library, convention, association, conference. I was somewhere every week, and I was literally running myself ragged. I would be on the road for 3 weeks, and then I'd be sick for two. And then I'd be on the road for three, and I'd be sick for two. And it was me in my studio apartment in Washington, D.C., trying to keep myself together. And I couldn't slow down because I was like, there are kids that are in need. And the thing that
Mm,
got me so excited about Weirdo was that, like, wait a minute, what if a book can be all of the places that I can't be? A
yeah.
book can be in every locker, in every library, in every backpack. And when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and there's a kid who's mulling over doing something that they can't come back from and nobody's there, a book can be there. So that was always the plan. But I think there's always a part of me, I don't know if it's humbleness or if it's self-doubt that's like, you can plan whatever you want. I don't know if it's going to work out the way you want it to. Um, but to see it actually happening in real time, um, students telling me how my book made them feel seen,
Yeah.
parents telling me how they noticed that their kids were struggling and they were looking for resources and they were able to find my book and how transformative it was able to be in their kids' lives. I think the impact on the kids is something that humbles me, but the impact on parents, to have a parent kind of look at you and say,
Thank you.
there's a person that is the person that I love the most in this world, and I couldn't help them. I felt so helpless. I didn't know what they were going through. I didn't know how to talk to them. I didn't know how to get to them. But I went and I grabbed something with your name on it, and that did something for my kid. Um, I don't even know how to quantify what that does for me or how that makes me feel. It's deeply motivational, and I'm just happy to be in community with people like that. I'm glad that my story gets to exist in that way.
To have a book that could save a life, I mean, it's unbelievable. As I listened to you, as you talked about your books being everywhere, do you also engage in training others to do the work as well?
So how do I put it? I do and I don't. Because for me, writing, writing is a profession, but it's also like a blood sport for me. Writing is the closest that I will ever get to being in the Coliseum. When I go tackle these ideas, I am Hercules chopping the head off of a Hydra and then chopping two more and then chopping two more. Like you mentioned, you don't write at night. I'm like, I do my best writing at night. My dad
Oh,
worked the
wow.
night shift for my entire life, so I think it's in my DNA. Weaver men work at night. And when I was writing Weirdo, I remember I'd be writing until 6 or 7 a.m. And then I'd rest and wake up at like 2 in the afternoon and then get right back at it. Um, I think training other people on how to get their stories down is something that I'm working on. But before I start doing it, what I need to do is like kind of peel back my personal biases about writing in the writing process. In the same way that I talked about that flexibility earlier, I
Yeah.
need to be flexible for myself about what writing can look like. Because if you sat me in front of a class today, I'd be like, all right, at 10 p.m., your assignment begins. And I also think I write in a very targeted way. For me, like I have some friends that are like, I thought this would be a cool idea. So I started writing, and I'm like, cool idea, cool idea. Every time I have an idea, I'm what's the word? I run it through 1,000 different contingencies about market viability, audience development, who's reading it, where are those people going to be when they read it, how does it fit in the marketplace? Is it going to end up on Target? In Target, isn't going to end up on in the Scholastic Book Fair? What specific librarian is going to need to recommend it, and what are those people's sensibilities? I do a lot of industry analysis before I sit down to write anything. And frankly, I think that's what makes I think that helps a lot. And I like that. I don't feel forced to do it. I enjoy that part of the process because I think the job of a storyteller, you have to tell your story in a way that your audience is going to hear. And I think a lot of that industry analysis is how I evaluate that. Um, but I think there will be some occasions in which people will say, well, that's not necessarily the writing part, that's the industry part. And I'm like, well, that's the part that I get excited about. The writing is one thing, but the industry stuff, I'm like, ooh, this is great.
So, Tony, many young writers
Mhm.
struggle with confidence.
Yep.
Did you ever face any self-doubt when you were writing? Not as a person, but as a writer.
So I think yes and no. So when I'm not writing, when I am outside of the writing discipline, when I'm just a civilian on the street that's walking into Penguin Random House or Macmillan or HarperCollins or whoever to sell a book, I don't feel doubt in my writing at all because there's some really bad books that have been extremely successful. Like I think people get really like how do I put it? There are people that write stories and there are people that are like stewards of the art of writing, if that makes sense. And I'm like, you don't have to be a steward of the discipline of writing to write a commercially successful book. So even though I try to be a student of that discipline, I'm like, I don't get scared because even if I'm not, the book could still sell. So it's fine. But when I'm actually writing, like when I'm in the process of writing, I describe it as like I'm holding like a pack of Ritz crackers in my hand and I'm trying not to squeeze too hard so that they won't like crumble and turn into crumbs in front of me. I think every project that I write until I hit like the 55-60% mark of a project, at any given point, it could turn to dust in my hands. It could turn to sand and like sift through my fingers. It's extremely delicate. And I think at least for the first 30% of anything that I'm writing, there's this voice in my head that's like, is this even a book? Like, should you even be making this? Like, is there even any like demand for this? You did all of that like market feasibility stuff, but like, does anybody actually want this story? Um, and I keep moving past that voice every time. And every time I get past a certain point, I'm like, I'm glad I did that.
So
So our
we're coming
final,
back on, and I'm booing us because we want this to go on for another hour and a half. We really do. Tanny and
so
I have been
good.
texting. We want one last burning question, Val. What do you got? You got one last question.
Well, I was actually thinking of Nazir, the young boy that you said
Yeah,
that you began mentoring fourth
yeah.
grade. And there might be other children like him listening who they want to write. What can you share with them about how to get started?
I think that if you want to write, the thing that you should focus on crafting is your point of view. How do
Mm.
you feel about things and why do you feel that way? because like I think writing in general, it's just a point of view. You can look at I'm trying to think of one on the fly. I should really keep this in my back pocket. Uh, but you can look at the exact same scenario or the exact same prompt and give it to two different writers, and they're going to come back with completely different variations of that prompt. And it's because they have different points of view. Some people, no, perfect example. You can look at the NFL, for example. You can look at the film, The Blind Side, and see someone that looks at the NFL and looks at professional football as like uh, this positive, optimistic thing where dreams are able to take place. And you can also look at a film like Him, like the film that just came out. Um, and they look at the NFL and like football in general as a sport as like, actually, this is really scary. This is horrific. All those people, they have different points of view. As a writer, if you want to make anything, if you feel fear, what I say is that your fear is not of writing. Your fear is of your point of view, either because you don't understand it well enough to articulate it in the way that you want to articulate it, or because you fear how other people are going to respond to your point of view. But I think that any piece of successful writing lies in a point of view. So that's the thing that you can focus on. Aside from like the actual mechanics and discipline of literally writing, iron out your point of view.
So
Thank you,
I'm
Tony.
hearing our audience listeners going, Crandall, don't be such a jerk. Keep them going, keep them going. And guess what? I'm listening to you. I want, before we get to a closing prompt, just to say, Tony, you gave so many of us educators the oxygen mask that you talked about this evening. Nerds for Literacy. I want the t-shirt. I want to wear it tomorrow, right? I need to learn how to play Pokemon. I don't know how to do that, but I'm intrigued. You can teach me
I can
sometime
help
if you
with
wanted
that.
to. The fact that you said stories save lives, and we need the writers to offer potential solutions for what the young people are looking for in their answers. Wow. And Val, I appreciate your wit, your humor, and your organizing superpowers. It was so clear this evening, and I hope all the listeners find the superpower of patience and flexibility that the two of them offered. The desire in your heart to make the kids become the best versions of themselves is what we at the National Writing Project do. We need more tolerance for the intelligence spectrum. I am in awe of the conversation the two of you just had. I hope that it's just ongoing and more momentum keeps springing your way, because this is the kind of thing that teachers have needed for a very long time. But I also know we have to do one final prompt, and then Tanya has to do her executive director stuff.
Oops, hold on. I'm on the wrong. Happened. Okay, sorry. Oops. There we go. Takes me a minute. Okay, Val, one final prompt.
Write a short story about a character who feels like they don't quite fit in. Show how the character learns to embrace who they are and turns their difference into a strength.
Beautiful. That I agree with Brian. This was such an amazing show, largely because of what both of you are putting out into the world in your work and in this conversation. And I want to say, for me, Tony, the thing I'll take away that I feel like I think, but I didn't really have the words for, is that the stories that kids respect are the stories that respect
I
them,
love
that we
that.
treat them like they can't carry
Mhm.
what they're already carrying, maybe because we don't want to see how much kids are carrying in the world we've created. But
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your time. Thank you for this conversation. It's been amazing. And then I'm also, before I stop recording, supposed to say thank you. Listeners, we're so glad you're here, and I'm sure you're thrilled and that you're going to go out and get class sets of Weirdo right now, or library copies for your school, because clearly it's the thing that kids need and that we need to provide. So thanks everybody for being here tonight.
NWP
Take
Radio.
care.
You're listening to NWP Radio, a production of the National Writing Project.
NWP. NWP Radio.